Before we begin this amazing story, I want to hear from you. Tell me down in the comments where you're watching from, whether it's the snow-covered streets of Denver, the wide plains near Dodge City, or the rugged trails of Santa Fe. I love seeing how far these Wild West tales travel. It makes every story feel like it's shared around one big fire. Snow drifted like ash across the wooden platform, the kind of snow that muted footsteps and swallowed voices, leaving only the sound of the steam engine's breath and the faint creak of the station roof. Clara Whitfield sat on a bench with her leather bag by her side, a letter clutched in her lap, sealed in wax she had not dared to break. Her hair, once the pride of her youth, hung in a loose braid, strands frozen where her breath touched them. She looked like someone waiting for a train that would not come. Not really waiting, but holding herself still so she did not fall apart in front of strangers. Across the platform, a tall man walked forward with the heavy stride of one accustomed to work. His long coat trailed the snow, and his face bore the weather of winters past. Two children padded close at his side, leaving little tracks behind. Tommy, sharp-eyed, his patch-brown clothes tugged snug against the wind, and Lila, clutching a small bear to her chest, her cheeks red as berries in the frost. The children stopped, pointing toward the woman on the bench, their voices hushed yet certain, as if they sensed something in her the way children sometimes do. The man did not answer them. His gaze lingered only a moment before turning back to the drifting snow. By late morning, Clara stepped into the warmth of the general store, snow clinging to her coat hem. The stove inside breathed out heat, and the smell of flour and kerosene filled her lungs. She stood before the counter where Margaret Hensley, wide-hipped and watchful, stacked tins of coffee. With trembling fingers, Clara pulled the plain gold band from her hand. The last proof of a life she once had, an anchor to a husband now gone, to a home long out of reach. "I'll trade this," Clara whispered. "Just bread. Enough for today." Margaret glanced at the ring, then at Clara's face, and her mouth bent into something cruel. "Gold won't keep a stove burning, nor fill a belly. You're late, Clara. The world's moved on." She spoke loud enough for the man by the sacks of grain to hear, for the women with their baskets to snicker behind gloved hands. Clara's face burned with shame. She lowered her eyes, wanting the floorboards to open and swallow her whole. From the doorway, Elias Boone watched in silence. He had come for nails and lamp oil, yet what held him there was not his list but the hollow sound of Clara's plea. Tommy tugged at his sleeve, eyes wide. "Pa," he whispered, "she looks hungry." Elias said nothing at first, only let out a breath that curled in the cold draft of the open door. Then he stepped forward, laid coins on the counter, and pushed the bread toward Clara without a word. She tried to give him the ring, pressing it into his palm. His rough hand closed, then slowly opened again, the ring lying there between them like a fallen star. He shook his head. His voice, when it came, was quiet but steady. "Gold isn't what we need. You are." The words startled her, not because of kindness, but because they felt like an answer to a question she hadn't spoken aloud. Her throat ached as she clutched the bread to her chest and stumbled out into the snow. Outside, she tore pieces from the loaf with stiff fingers. Two small hands reached for hers, Tommy's and Lila's. They sat beside her on the bench, as though it were the most natural thing in the world, chewing happily, their laughter rising like smoke in the winter air. Clara's chest tightened. For the first time in months, she felt warmth that had nothing to do with fire. Elias stood a little apart, leaning against a post, arms folded. He did not smile, not quite, but something softened in his face as he watched. Snow fell heavier, blurring the lines of the world, drawing them into a small circle of bread, breath, and silence. But whispers carried farther than snow. By dusk, Sheriff Colton Price approached Elias outside the livery. His hat brim was white with frost, his voice measured. "You know what folks are saying, Elias. Taking Clara in will bring trouble. You've got enough to carry with the little ones. Let the woman find her own way." Elias's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the storm gathering over the ridgeline. "I don't care about talk," he said at last. "I care about what's in front of me." The wind rose sharp, cutting across the street. Lanterns flickered in windows, and the snow turned fierce, driving folks indoors. Clara stood uncertain at the edge of town, her bag at her feet, her face pale in the storm light. Elias walked toward her, each step firm against the drift. "Come on," he said. No flourish, no persuasion, just a hand reaching into the storm. She hesitated, heart thundering like the rails beneath a passing train. Then she bent to lift her bag, the wax-sealed letter tucked safe inside. Snow whipped about them as she followed him toward the Boone Ranch, the children running ahead, their laughter cutting through the howl of the wind. The storm swallowed the town behind them, and for the first time in years, Clara did not feel entirely alone. The Boone Ranch sat quiet beneath the weight of winter, the roof creaking when the wind pressed hard against it, the windows haloed with frost. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke, her body aching from travel, yet strangely steadied by the rhythm of this place. She had been given a cot near the fire, a quilt heavy with the scent of cedar, and though she had not slept in a bed that felt safe for years, her dreams were gentle. Morning came with small tasks. She mended socks by lantern glow, stirred oats over the stove, folded laundry, still warm from the line. Elias said little, but his silence was not the silence of judgment. It was the silence of a man who carried weight carefully, who did not waste words when work could speak for him. The children had already given her a place without asking. Tommy demanded she read from a tattered Bible before bed, and Lila pressed the bear into Clara's lap, as if to share its worn comfort. These were small things, but they stitched her into the fabric of the house. Yet the town did not forget. On Sundays, Clara followed Elias and the children into the church pews, her head lowered. She felt the heat of stairs burning her back. Margaret Hensley's whisper carried even beneath the hymns. "Beggar woman, clinging where she doesn't belong." Clara's hands trembled over the hymnal, her voice thin with shame. After the service, she lingered by the door and caught the edge of Margaret's laugh, sharp as breaking glass. She wanted to leave, to slip into the snow and vanish like smoke. But when she turned, she saw Elias outside, speaking low to a neighbor. His voice carried just enough. Better to be useful than prideful. She knew the words were meant for her ears, though his back was turned. Something loosened inside her chest, something that had been wound too tight for too long. The weeks moved forward like pages turning. Clara worked in the barn alongside Elias, her skirts damp with hay and snow. He showed her how to steady the lantern so the cattle did not spook. She patched his coat without being asked, laying it across the chair at dawn. And some evenings, when the children were asleep, Elias would set a second cup on the table, pouring coffee without a word. They did not need speech. The glance of his eyes across the rim of a cup said more than most men's sentences. A slow warmth grew between them, not quick like fire, but steady as embers in a stove. But gossip gnawed. One bitter evening, a storm trapped the supply train beyond the pass. Flour, sugar, beans, all delayed. The shelves in town emptied within days. Mothers fretted. Men cursed the rails. Margaret Hensley's tongue wagged sharper than ever. What good is Clara Whitfield, with her fine manners and empty hands? Charity doesn't fill bellies. Clara stood before Elias that night, trembling but resolved. She opened her leather bag, the one she had guarded since she left the station. From its depths, she drew packets of dried herbs, folded papers with her father's handwriting, seeds, remedies, notes from years of study. Her late father had been a physician, tending both settlers and the poor. Clara had carried his knowledge through every hardship, waiting for a moment to prove it mattered. "I know what we can use," she said softly. "Roots in the hills, substitutes for flour, ways to make the little last longer." Some townsfolk laughed. Margaret rolled her eyes, but Elias only nodded, steady as oak. "You'll see," he told the room, his voice like iron in the firelight. "She's worth more than gold." In the days that followed, Clara led women into the snowy fields, showing them how to dig for tubers hidden deep, how to steep herbs to soothe coughs, how to stretch a scrap of flour into bread enough for many mouths. Skepticism turned to gratitude when children's bellies filled, when the weak found warmth in her remedies. Slowly, suspicion gave way to something else: respect. The church no longer whispered when Clara entered. Mothers came to her for advice. Even Margaret, proud and sour, lowered her gaze when passing her in the street. It was not gold that had bought her place, nor pity. It was usefulness, quiet resilience, the grace of steady hands in time of need. When at last the train broke through the pass and the whistle echoed across the valley, the town cheered. Supplies returned, shelves filled, hunger eased. But Clara did not pack her bag. She stood at the edge of the platform with Elias's children clinging to her skirts. "Don't leave, Mama Clara," Lila whispered, her little face wet with tears. Tommy's small hand clutched hers tight, as if to anchor her in place. Elias stood nearby, coat drawn against the wind, his eyes on her. He said nothing. He didn't need to. His gaze carried the weight of every silence they had shared, the meals, the work, the quiet nights by the fire. Clara reached into her pocket and drew out the gold ring. She had kept it through shame, through hunger, through storms. She pressed it into Elias's palm, not as payment, not as burden, but as vow. His fingers closed around it slowly, as though he understood without her speaking. The train roared, smoke clouding the sky, but Clara stayed on the platform, her bag at her feet, the children's arms around her. The town bustled around them, yet in that moment it felt as though time itself had stilled. And if you had stood there, friend, you would have seen what I did. A woman who came begging for bread but found her worth in being needed, a man who learned that silence could be a language of love, and 2 children who no longer feared the cold. Remember this. Your worth is not measured by what you hold in your hands, nor by the shine of what you can offer. The world does not hunger for gold. It hungers for presence, for kindness, for someone willing to stay. And in the wide silence of winter, that is the truest bread a soul can give.